Well, good morning, everybody. This is Pastor Jay, and I'm coming to you from the vicarage. And we are here on this beautiful, if foggy, a little rainy Tuesday morning to do our Tuesday Digging Deeper devotional. And all this week, we're digging deeper into Acts chapter 10, the story of Cornelius. If you remember, on Sunday, we entitled this sermon, A Tale of Two Men, the two men being Cornelius and Peter that we're talking about. And on Sunday, we talked about who Cornelius was, who he was not, and what he needed, and who Peter was, who he was not, and what he needed. And in light of that, we began talking also about the church, what the church is, what the church is not, and what it needs in these days, in these times. So let's begin with Acts chapter 10 and just take a few verses at a time, shall we? Acts chapter 10, verse 1. At Caesarea, there was a man named Cornelius, a centurion in what was known as the Italian regiment. Now, Caesarea was a big part of Israel at that time. It was a very important city, and it was also a place where Jesus had done some work. And so Cornelius was a man who would have at least been acquainted with Jesus by reputation. At Caesarea, there was a man named Cornelius, a centurion in what was known as the Italian regiment. He and all his family were devout and God-fearing. He gave generously to those in need and prayed to God regularly. So, a couple of things about Cornelius. He was a Gentile, not a Jew. He was a centurion, which means he was a soldier. And he was living as a Roman citizen in Israel. Now, already that put him outside the bounds of acceptable society in Israel because he was a Gentile, specifically he was a Roman, and thirdly he was a soldier. However, in spite of all those things, Cornelius and his whole family were devout and God-fearing. They had left behind the pagan trappings of Rome and had embraced the faith of Israel to the degree as Gentiles that they were able. It's important to remember that as a Roman citizen, as a Gentile, and certainly as a centurion, Cornelius could not have fully embraced Judaism. He could not step totally into the Jewish lifestyle because of his lifestyle, because of his job, and because of his birthright. And so Cornelius was following a faith that could not accept him and would not fully accept him without him letting go of his Roman trappings completely and turning his back on who he was at his birth and also in his job. Cornelius, if he was to become a Jew, would in all likelihood have had to leave his role as a soldier, and that would have probably been impossible in that day. So he was a man kind of stuck in between two worlds. But in spite of that, he remained devout and God-fearing, and he gave generously to those in need, and he prayed to God, our God, regularly. The Bible says in Micah, sorry, there's a lot of National Grid trucks going by here today. The Bible says in Micah chapter 6, starting in verse 6, Micah asked this question: with what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Now, Cornelius would not have been allowed to make sacrifices at the temple because he was not Jewish. And so the question that Micah asks is very important for Cornelius. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has shown you, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Cornelius couldn't go through the act of offering burnt offerings for him or his family. He wasn't Jewish. His offering wouldn't have been accepted. He couldn't, his offering of his firstborn son as a ritual offering, so the Jews made a ritual offering to redeem their firstborn. It's not talking about offering firstborn son to the fire. It's not talking about human sacrifice here. It's talking about the offering of the firstborn for redemption. And there's a firstborn offering you would use. You would give the firstborn of your flock, and you would offer in place of your firstborn son a ram from the flock to redeem that child, so that your family could be redeemed, your family line could be redeemed. Cornelius couldn't go through that ritual because he wasn't a Jew. But he could do what truly pleased the Lord, to act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly before his God. And that he did. And that's what he's calling us to do. And as we begin to pursue God in that way, God begins to reveal himself. On Thursday, we'll talk a little bit more about what began to happen to Cornelius, and because of what Cornelius did, what began to happen to Peter. And we'll reveal that more on Thursday when we get together for our next Digging Deeper. Until we meet again, God bless you and be at peace.